Hello! We are here to talk about fishing in Pokemon Emerald and how much it sucks. This is a follow-up to my "Is there actually too much water in Pokemon Emerald" video? So if you haven't watched that, go do that. This video can wait. Okay, so before we go into the actual fishing tables, let's go over some stuff I wanted to put in the last video that just didn't fit the whole format. If you want to skip this part and jump right to the tables, here is the timestamp. But I don't think you want to miss this stuff. Water-type Pokemon. Let's be real. You probably only want one of them on your team. Unless you're a Team Aqua apologist. If you're cool, you picked Mudkip as your starter. And if you didn't, you're lame. But it doesn't really matter, because here's the thing. In order to surf and get surf encounters, you need a Pokemon that can learn Surf. So unless you're using your Linoone for surfing, you probably already have a Water-type Pokemon on your team. What this means is you probably aren't even looking to catch a Water Pokemon on sea routes. Why would you catch a level 5 Tentacool when you already have a level 36 Swampert? Yes, the wild encounters can be as low as level 5. Why? I don't know. The Pokemon on the route prior to your most likely earliest sea expedition are around level 25, so it makes zero sense that they vary from level 5 to 35 on the sea routes. And yes, that's all sea routes. So, even if the encounter tables were interesting, it isn't like you're going to abandon one of your team members for a new Pokemon to train up at this point in your journey. This is a problem for all late game encounters, not just ones done at sea. If you already have a grass type, it isn't like you're going to abandon one of your teammates to add the Gloom to your team from Route 121. The obvious solution to this problem is giving players Surf sooner, so that they can actually encounter a wild surfing Pokemon between like Petalburg, Dewford, and Slateport. But, let's be real, you probably have a Mudkip anyway, so this is all probably moot. Okay, let's talk HMs. There are too many Water-type HMs. We knew this in Generation 2. There were 2 water routes in Gold and Silver, and yet we had Surf, Whirlpool, and Waterfall. In Generation 3, we replaced Whirlpool with Dive. Generation 3 was also prior to the physical special split, so all 3 of these moves are special Water-type moves you need to teach to a team member in order to beat the game. But did either Dive or Waterfall really need to exist? Instead of making Dive a separate HM, why don't we make it a function of Surf that's just unlocked after Gym 7? That saves us 1 HM, and Waterfall could still exist as an HM but not be required to reach Victory Road. Waterfall does have a combat niche of having a chance to flinch the opponent, and also being single target, unlike Surf, which hits all other combatants in a double battle. But Waterfall did not need to be required to beat the game. You know that badge check in Generation 1? The guards checking to make sure you have all the badges? That's all you need to get off Victory Road, although, I will admit, it looks cool to have Victory Road be at the top of a waterfall. With all that said, let's talk about fishing. As you can recall in the last video, land encounter tables have 12 slots with the probability of each slot being 20, 20, 10, 10, 10, 10, 5, 5, 4, 4, 1, and 1% respectively. Surf encounter tables are made up of 5 slots with the probability of each slot being called at 60, 30, 5, 4, and 1% respectively. Now let's take a look at the fishing table. And look at that, there are actually 10 slots for fishing. That is twice the number of slots for surfing. That's a win, right? Fishing is better. Well, yes and no. Turns out it's more complicated than that. Who could have known? Me. I'm the one who knew. So, let me break down these 10 slots into their probabilities for you. Slot number 1 is 70%, while slot number 2 is 30%. Slot number 3 is 60%, and slot number 4 is... Wait, you're telling me that this isn't making any sense? Let me check those numbers again. 70 plus 30 plus 60. Oh shit, you're right. That's a total of 160%. Well, that's because this is the table for all 3 fishing rods combined. So, let's split them up so it's easier to visualize. There we go. So for the old rod, there are 2 slots. one with a 70% probability, and one with a 30% probability. The good rod has 3 slots, one with a 60% probability, and 2 with 20% probabilities. As for the super rod, we have 5 whole slots. That's the same number as the surf encounter table, and guess what? It's actually better than the surf table. Like, for real this time, this is unequivocally a better table. Unequivocally? Is that the right word? Adverb in a way that leaves no doubt. Yep, that's right. But not by a whole lot. Unfortunately, I have to burst your bubble there. See, the thing is with the super rod, the first slot is 40%. The second slot is also 40%. That means 2 species make up 80% of your catches, which is down from 90% on the surf table. The remaining 3 slots are 15, 4, and 1% respectively. Now you could make the argument that diversity on water routes could potentially be summed up as a total of 15 slots, 5 for surfing and 10 for fishing, which would make them actually more diverse than the 12 slots for land routes. But I think you realize that that is a false equivalency. As I said earlier in this video, by the time you have the Super Rod, you aren't looking for a water-type Pokemon to add to your team, because you need a Pokemon with Surf to get the Super Rod. You didn't skip that part of the video, did you? I will know if you did. So now that we have examined the fishing tables, let's see how Game Freak put them into action. For shits and giggles. I'll make this as simple as possible. There is regional diversity on the Super Rod fishing table. Congratulations! That means Game Freak staff do understand that different bodies of water are different and would be filled with different types of fauna. They just decided to only apply that to the Super Rod encounter tables and not the Surf encounter tables. This tells us that they knew exactly what they were doing and chose not to fix it. Now, I am specifying Super Rod here because every Sea Route's Old Rod encounter table is 70% Magikarp and 30% Tentacool, as if we don't get enough of the things while we're surfing. Stupid ocean Zubats. Every Sea Route Good Rod table is 60% Magikarp, 20% Tentacool, and 20% Whalmer. Wait, we're fishing up whales with a fishing rod now? Could you imagine going on a fishing trip with your old man? You reel in a fucking 2-meter long whale weighing 130 kilos? Nah, me neither. Tangent aside, let's start looking at the Super Rod tables by region. As I go over each table, this map on screen will update to show what locations we are examining. Let's first look at the west. This will include most of the routes between Slateport and Rustboro, including both sea routes and land routes with ocean segments. All of the highlighted routes have Whalmer be the one and only Pokemon you can fish up with the Super Rod. If you are well versed in your Pokemon Emerald, you may notice that there are 2 strange exceptions, Route 104 and Route 103. Let's take a look at Route 104 first because it is the stranger example. See, the only thing you can catch with a fishing rod here is Magikarp. Old Rod, 100% Magikarp. Good Rod, 100% Magikarp. Super Rod, 100% Magikarp. Why is this, you may ask? Pokemon Sapphire's Magikarp Pokédex entry has your answer. It is actually a very hardy Pokemon that can survive in any body of water, no matter how polluted it is. The obvious answer is that Mr. Briny is burning bunker fuels in that ship of his. No, but for real though, the answer is because of this pond north of Petalburg Woods. As both the top and bottom sections surrounding Petalburg Woods are the same route, they have to be programmed to the same encounter pools, which is also why, when surfing on this route, there are no Tentacool, only Wingull and Pelipper. Okay, well we can forgive Game Freak on that one, I guess. They were limited by the programming, you know? The programming they wrote, but they were limited by it. Also, I want to point out that since this is categorized as a land route, I did not lie earlier about all the Good Rod tables being the same on sea routes. Just want to put that out there before someone comments about my dishonesty. So, now let's look at Route 103. As you can see here, Route 103 is an inlet that connects to the north of Slateport, and therefore should have the same encounter table as Route 110. Although, we already determined that Route 110 only has Whalmer on the Super Rod encounter table, so Route 103 must have some other shallow water inlet encounter, something that thrives in shallow water and close to land, right? It's Sharpedo. There's a 40% chance to fish up Sharpedo here. Yes, not only are we fishing up whales, but we're also fishing up 1.8 meter long sharks too. Fine. Whatever, I'll suspend my disbelief at what you, an 11-year-old child, are capable of fishing out of the water, but I will not forgive the fact that Sharpedo live in this inlet, but not in the water immediately outside of this inlet, Route 110's water only has Whalmer. Let's move west and travel out from Slateport towards Pacific-Log. The 3 high current routes between Slateport and Pacific-Log are the next biome we'll look at. These 3 routes share Super Rod encounter table of 45% Whalmer, 15% Horsey, and 40% Sharpedo. Wait, so you're telling me there are sharks here, but not here? You know what? Let it go. You can let this go, Giga. You can let this go. Just serenity now. Interestingly, these are the only 3 routes you can catch Horsey in. I'm no marine biologist, but a basic search tells me that seahorses live in warm, shallow waters with coral reefs. Since these routes are filled with a lot of islands, it could be assumed that the water here is quite shallow, and could hold coral reefs. Good job, Game Freak, you actually did something right for once. Moving along east, we hit Pacific-Log and the adjacent routes. Here we can fish up Whalmer and Sharpedo, with 60% and 40% encounter rates respectively. Just like that inlet. Going north from the famous Whalelord route, we encounter the very first route that proves I lied earlier. Route 128 has a unique good rod encounter table too. If you recall earlier, I stated that all sea routes have the same good rod table, but that was a lie. On Route 128 and Evergrande City, which isn't really much a city, but whatever, the 20% tentacle chance is replaced with a 20% Love Disc chance. Love Disc, a weak Pokemon that no one will ever use in a run because Game Freak put it at the literal end of the game. As far as the Super Rod encounter table goes, the Sharks are out, and Love Disc and Corsola are in. Whalmer has 45%, Love Disc has 40%, and Corsola has 15%. Corsola, a weak Pokemon no one will ever use in a run because Game Freak put it at the literal end of the game. Going north from here, we hit what I call the main part of the ocean. This stretches from Sutopolis to Shoal Cave and Lily Cove, but not inclusive of Lily Cove, we will get there. In these 4 routes, plus Moss Deep City, you can fish up Whalmer and Sharpedo with your Super Rod at a 60% and 40% chance, respectively. From here, we move to Lily Cove, which is the only place you can fish up Staryu with a Super Rod. Whalmer has an 85% chance here, and Staryu has a 15% chance here. We aren't done yet. We have one last water route around Mount Pyre to look at. And it's just Whalmer and Sharpedo again. Okay, I have avoided talking about it long enough. Let's talk about Route 118. Route 118 is where the fresh water of Route 119's river meets the ocean. While this is a land route, it does have a sea segment, so I should talk about it, especially since it is different from all the other sea route encounter tables. Here, you have a 60% chance to encounter Carvanha, and a 40% chance to encounter Sharpedo. Since Carvanha evolves into Sharpedo, this river is clearly the spawning ground for all of the Sharpedo in the... Wait. This is right next to Route 110. The route that has no the good rod encounter table of Route 118 is also different from the standard, this time replacing the 20% Whalmer chance with a 20% Carvanha chance. Makes sense. As you can see, even if the actual Super Rod fishing table is better than the surfing table, which it is, they barely ever use it for anything interesting. I'll admit, it is better as a collective whole, but it still isn't great. And also, let's reiterate, you aren't looking for water types to add to your team at this point. The only reason you are Super Rod fishing is to fill out your Pokedex. That's it. And with that, I thought I was done with this video, until I realized something cursed about my favorite route, Route 119. See, Route 119 is something I overlooked in the last video. I love this route. Everything about its aesthetic screams creativity to me. The constant rain, the super tall grass, the crisscrossing bridges over the river... What are Tentacool doing in my river?